to the Courtyard. We are with Guy Davis. Wow.
Cheers.
Nice timing. I know. From Davis Family Vineyards, and of course George Christie, the owner of Wine Industry Network.
It's good to be here.
Our top resource for information in the industry. There you go.
All right.
A great way to start a Wednesday.
Heck yeah.
Here, I'm doing a terrible job of pouring that. There you go, George. How's your week been?
Good. It's been busy.
Yeah, we all.
That holiday thing going on.
Thank you.
And holidays in the wine country.
Yep.
Of course, you know we live in Camelot, in the perfect area. Okay, Guy, it is so good to have you here.
Thank you.
Sorry we're working hard at the beginning of the show, but we are starting with this lovely Davis Family Sparkling. And why don't you tell us a little bit about this, and then we'll
Rosé de Noir, we call it, as they have labeled 100% Pinot Noir that's without color, Blanc de Noir. So we call this Rosé de Noir because 100% Pinot Noir from the Dutton Ranch, vineyard
wow.
designated. This is a block that the Dutton Zone that's far western edge of the Green Valley here in Russian River Valley. It's an east-facing hillside. So great, exposure. We've got a morning sun, no real harsh afternoon sun. So for the sparkling wine chemistry, it's really beautiful. And this is the very bottom of the slope. There are 10 or 15 vines in each row that, just like warm air rises, the cool air and the fog sinks, and this won't ripen for still wine. They talked of grafting it over to Chardonnay just to get it ripe, and I was out there talking to him about I make a still wine from the top.
So what Guy's saying is you're helping them out because it's not a vineyard that will get ripe enough, but it works for sparkling, correct?
Stunning, yes. And I heard him describing, because they were meeting a butter right after me, for a meeting out there. We were looking at my block that I make still wine at the top of the slope, and I heard them talking about how they've even taken the crop down. It's still not quite ripe enough, and so they thought they'd graft it over to Chardonnay. And as I drove home that night, I thought, perfect.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Perfect description.
So you thought about the fact that it couldn't get ripe anyway, and this way you can get it to the perfect amount of acidity that you want, I assume. And
exactly, stays really bright and doesn't. It's
really
on the
good.
vine a long time. So and still comes in at 19 bricks and but most of the other sparkling's been in 3-4 weeks by the time I get to pick this. So the complexity is crazy to be on the vine that long and still come in at those numbers. So I've made this for a dozen years now, and I feel so lucky. And I stretched the tirage on this. This is 2017. I just disgorged it, so we do a full 3 years. I love it.
It is complex.
Thanks.
It's extremely complex. What do you think, George?
No, I love it. I was going to ask. Guy basically said what I was going to ask is that that extra hang time that you're getting is really allowing some of those flavors to come through that you weren't going to get picking 2 or 3 weeks earlier than that.
Yeah,
so
it's not
really
just
nice.
tart and bright, which it is, but at the same time, it's got rose petals and this kind of almost pomegranate.
Really fun to pair.
Red
I'm
fruit.
sure pair with this, you can do get really creative too.
Yeah.
What is your favorite thing to pair with this, to George's point?
I don't know, caviar and potato chips is pretty outstanding.
You can't go wrong with caviar and potato chips.
You cover the whole gamut.
Nice.
It's my go-to. Bellinis are great and all that, but just a bag of crispy Lay's and open the tin and start scooping, and the bottle's gone, the tin, it just seems to work out.
Do you know how good your lifestyle is if that's your go-to? That's fabulous. I love that. You got a little pushing for Lay's,
but oysters or any ripe cheeses or hard to go. Yeah, a sunny afternoon. they're all pretty good matches for this wine.
Did you happen to notice the title of this by any chance?
I did not.
It's called The French Connection.
Ah, okay.
I read about. It sounds like all of this started with your job in a French restaurant, from what I understand.
Yeah, my
And you-
connection to my family didn't drink wine when I was a kid, or drink at all. Maybe go to the neighbor's house and have one little, buttered rum or something at the holidays. But no, we didn't have wine at home. And I applied for a job in a French restaurant, putting myself through college. And I walked in there, saw a prep cook ad, asked a few people that I knew who worked in restaurants what that meant. They gave me a few hints. I went in,
Love that.
bullshitted a little bit, put down the name of a couple restaurants that I knew, said that I'd done a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and somebody had just cut their finger, and
Oh, your timing was
15
perfect.
minutes later, I was back there, heart racing and trying not to cut mine, and started snapping beans. And small, gentleman from France just married a woman from here in the States. She spent a couple years in Paris. He was a fourth generation restaurateur.
Wow.
Yeah, about a century. Their family had a little bistro in a neighborhood in Paris, and he brought the sous chef from his parents' restaurant after they'd been married and came to the Pacific Northwest, and we're way out of touch with what the States was like. I was 19 years old, which isn't just a couple of years ago.
Oh, sure it is.
And the wine list in Seattle, and I opened a second restaurant for them in Boise, Idaho, was Chablis, Burgundy, Blush.
Now, where did you grow up?
My parents moved about every year.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've,
So
I've
you
lived
had a-
in
you had a breadth of
Chicago, Kansas
experiences.
City,
Oh.
Denver, Omaha.
You sound very
all
Midwestern.
over. Yeah, I probably had some formative years around that Chicago, Kansas City
I know, I love that.
thing.
I love
Yeah.
that accent.
So, yeah, he missed the mark by a mile, but he was really set on doing this, the restaurant owner, what he was going to do. And so he started retooling right away. I mean, he put in a French wine list. And as I said, the wine lists at that point were Chablis and Burgundy, which meant generic white wine from E&J, and Hardy Burgundy. And they were in 9-liter boxes that were backed by, the compressor for the walk-in, and 90 degrees mostly. I mean, it was in a wine situation, but he stuck to his guns. He kept the wine list completely French, stuck to the dishes, and we refined them to kind of fit the right price point. And I got to be part of all those conversations, and every night we had family meals. So it was just the chef and I for dinner, small place, 16 tables, I think, or something like that, if we opened everything up.
Yeah.
And but we had a loyal following of people who traveled and who knew what dining was, and he wooed people over. But I remember sitting there and having them talking about the wines and changing the wine list. We really ratcheted the prices down and shrunk it, and renamed the categories, and he worked hard to make sure that people could understand it, and really worked hard to educate the staff. But I remember distinctly, probably, I don't know, a month into the process, I'd get the kitchen clean, or the majority of it clean, get to come out and join everybody for family meal, and he would rant about how poorly we all as Americans dined and how it should really be done. And he was right, but it just took us a while. It just took us 20 years to get to what he was trying to do in 1980. And but I remember about a month in.
So he obviously had a really formative impact on you.
Oh, it was everything, because I remember the moment where we were tasting two Chinon Cabernet Franc from Loire Valley, and I was just joining the table, and he was telling the chef, this one's a better wine, but it's too herbaceous for these fucking Americans. But this will sell better. And I remember picking it up and just coming straight from the kitchen and smelling bell peppers, and picking this one up and smelling pie cherries. And to that moment, whenever there was conversation around aromas or flavors or wine in general, it smelled like red wine. It's like, what's that smell like? It smells like red wine.
Right.
And all of a sudden was just so distinctive. And I knew exactly what he meant, because this was kind of off-putting for me at that point, and then I could smell this really kind of bright red fruit, and from that moment on, it's like, no matter what was on the table, if we were talking about wine or
wow.
not, it's like, so what am I smelling here? And I really dug it, and I learned early on at their kind of amazement about the connection that I had a fairly sensitive olfactory nerve. I could really, because I could start picking apart the food and everything, and I really loved it. I used to really look forward to getting out. So I'd go to school all day and work 4 to midnight in the restaurant. And
how many years did you work there?
I worked there for, well, I worked for them for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, by the time I was 21, I was buying most all the wine for the list.
Nice.
The first 2 years I wasn't legal drinking age, and and I realized this just not that long ago, but the first 2 years I drank wine, I never had wine without a meal.
Interesting.
I drank wine with dinner 5 nights a week and didn't buy a bottle till I'd been drinking wine for 2 years. And
Nice.
and so that's the why I make, that's where my bullseye of what was good and great. And then as I started to be able to, so my degrees in economics, I did that in length. And then after I graduated, I was going to leave.
Where'd you go to school?
I was at Boise State, and
Oh,
then
okay.
I left and went to University of Utah to finish college. And
My degree's in economics too.
it is.
Yes.
See, if we'd have paid attention, we wouldn't be in this business.
Yeah, right. That's a very good point. Well, this is delicious. What a fabulous way to start.
Thank you.
And I love the fact that that's on your bio and your history, that you go back to that. I mean, I think we all have moments where we remember the first time we really appreciated wine, and you had this period of time. And has it influenced your winemaking in that you lean toward a French style?
Well, I lean towards balance and complexity, and I don't know that I mimic that, but I've now, because it extended beyond that, because I finished school and I met Judy, my wife, during college too. She was working in restaurants. And so once we graduated, we had this fascination with food and wine. We were here in wine country before we even finished school in California. And then he set me up, the owner of this restaurant, with some of these great small families in France when we could afford to travel, because I had a fascination with French food and wine after working for years in the restaurant and hearing all the stories. So once I met these great little small family wineries, and I'd been working for Dean Witter Financial Organization, and I was a stockbroker. And I had this idea in my late 20s to take that business model of talking to successful individuals, but not about their investment portfolio where they're very guarded and their money, but to my best connections with my customers were the people who traveled and dined, and that's where I made my connection and created those relationships and friendships. So I decided to represent from both here and France originally, but then started working with some of the other European countries. So we started a company called Passport Wine Club and sold wine through phone and fax and curly little fax paper to people. I mean, everybody knew how to buy Aubryon if you had $300, but how do you spend $30 on a bottle of French wine and even know or get something great? So we'd write these cool stories about the people we knew and put it in the mail. And in doing that, I got to work a couple harvests in Burgundy and Rhone Valley, and just to better tell their story. And in working for free, I got to roam around with the winemaker a lot and work hard, but also see so much that at a certain point, it was like I found this joy in being in that side of it so much that I decided. So while I had Passport Wine Club for a few years, I would drive to UC Davis 3 nights a week and study fermentation science and viticulture. And
oh, well, you're one up on my economics degree. I never did anything but the economics. So at least you have some training in fermentation sciences.
Yeah, just just enough, not a degree, but just enough to get to not make mistakes. And then found this amazing but super neglected property in Russian River Valley on Laguna Road, which I saved, a little block of Zinfandel, which I opened from vines that were 100 years old. They're now 125 years old, and got them. Took 3 years to get them back into production, and they finally set fruit. And
Nice.
they set fruit in 1998, and in 1998. This thing called the internet and email had been invented, and our company, which was doing okay at the time, so a publicly traded company on the East Coast offered to buy Passport Wine Club.
so you were doing the wine club, you bought this piece of property, and then you
replanted it, started saving this, started a little brand in '97, and a year later, instead of the
that's when you
winery getting to
and
be a
was it
side project.
Davis Family?
Yeah, first vintage was '97. I bought some Dutton Ranch Chardonnay and a little Cabernet from Napa Valley from Rudy von Strasser, and made some couple hundred cases, and that was a side project. And then I got to move that to the main project, and didn't
then-
get rich, but made enough to kind of finish planting the vineyard and put half a deer fence in, and
Half a deer fence.
Hope they didn't
Yeah.
find the other half.
you know, the other half came, 4 posts at a time over the next few years, and then came even pavement for the road that was a muddy mess most of the time. And
Those,
yeah,
those passport days must have been pretty cool. As you were talking about, I was thinking it must have felt like treasure hunting a little bit, right? So you go out there and you're basically looking for treasures, right?
Yeah.
Things that like no one's heard of, and you could bring
well,
back.
and there were some amazing people that I met back then. A guy named Kermit Lynch, you might have heard of him.
A little guy named Kermit Lynch.
Gave us referrals to go. We go see some of his producers, and he sold us a little wine to help get started
Yeah.
of some of his people, or some of the people that he didn't feel like he was quite selling enough of. And then we'd meet them and ask if they had neighbors and so a lot of the time we were the only 100 cases that made it to the States.
So you'd physically go and find your producers? Mm-hmm. That's
So we did it direct.
fun.
We did everything direct.
And were you
DI,
in-
direct import.
Were you only in France, or did you say you went to other countries as well?
Eventually, then we started. Then we were kind of part of that whole.
Good job.
We got in early with Jorge Ordóñez from Spain when he first started.
Wow.
And got to go and discover things with him back when he used to do those death marches and take people around Spain. We started in the beginning where you actually took turns driving the little van and
The
stuff.
death march that Guy's referring to is when people go to
When your
Spain
importer
and
takes
yes,
you on this
and
glorious free trip where you get up at 4
yeah,
a.m. and drink
it's
till
a lot of
3
it's work.
a.m.
I've never been on that side of it. I haven't experienced it, but it's quite a. I mean, you really have to have a good palate to keep up with that as well. Truly.
Oh, yeah.
So it is a death march. Well, good job surviving it. Have you done that, George?
I have not done that. I don't know if I could do that anymore. Those days
sure
might be
you
behind me.
I don't know I could do that anymore either. But man, was it good then. That was the beginning of all those importer trips.
Yeah.
Now everybody's doing them, but no, that was so then we branched out to Spain, and we met some little properties that hadn't yet seen U.S. And even the Spanish Trade Commission asking us to go and taste at certain places and tell them what they thought the price should be or how stylistically it fit in the States. We were early on.
Yeah, very much
This is
pioneers.
Yeah, this is earlier, like 90, 91, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4.
Well, especially if you could
Wow.
take, and you could take all of their production on some small product, and just that's very cool.
Yeah. So take a piece that would be the only piece coming to the States and
Yeah.
stuff.
But the important thing is that you were you were already on the sales and marketing side before you got on the production side. And
Yes.
it is much better, as we know, to be a marketing person that learns how to make wine than be a winemaker that's learning how to sell.
No,
Yeah.
That's
I feel so lucky because it's why I'm still hanging in
there.
in 2020, hanging in there
and,
because
and your wines are absolutely delicious. Would you like a little more sparkling? Or
Sure.
would you, here, let's do that. And then let's talk about the next thing that you would like to taste. What do you
which
think?
works out let's stay with the French connection. So Beaujolais Nouveau. Let's drink Nouveau.
Okay. Yes, the fans are here. The couch people are here.
my sponsors here. I'm sponsored by Wrangler, and I got my band on, and the Wrangler, my
That's right.
VP's here and checking on me.
Perfect. Okay,
Let me
so
get my logo
we are.
out. On.
I'm sure we can find. I'm sure your fan base would like to try this.
That's delicious.
Yes, that'll
It is-
disappear. I know
it is
that
so
crowd.
delicious. In fact, you want to here? Why don't we pass this over to your fans
do.
over there?
Step out of camera.
Sorry to
for a
make you
second.
stand up.
Hi, miss.
Yeah.
Cheers.
And what are we going to try?
The
The
Nouveau of Pinot Noir. This is a
I love
2020.
your knowledge is amazing. I mean, your background. Okay.
Let's try some of that.
So, to bring everyone up to speed on what the term Nouveau is, in Beaujolais, a couple centuries ago, they started to make a wine that would celebrate the vintage of that year and make a wine that they would bottle. And now the international release day is tradition around the globe. But Beaujolais started
Well, traditionally it's would be released around Thanksgiving.
third week, so 1 week ahead of our Thanksgiving. So it's 100%. So it's released the third week of November. But the tradition in Beaujolais for this wine is to be 100% carbonic maceration, meaning a fermentation with no oxygen and completely whole cluster, never crushed. And I have two families that are.
Explain that in more detail. People
Yeah, I will.
are interested in
The
that.
normal fermentation process in wine, I mean, to break it way down simply, but the sugar is eaten by the yeast. They excrete alcohol and exhale a lot of carbon dioxide, and the yeast need a lot of oxygen to live during that fermentation. And during that process, they are active, and there's a thermal mass that creates a lot of heat. And that heat helps warm the must. At that point, most of the time, if it's red wine, they've been crushed. So you have the juice, the skins, and the seeds all together, which is a mash that we call must. And during that time, that heat and process helps extract all the goodies, all the color and flavor and aromas from the skins of the grapes. This wine is made very different. It's a conversion of the alcohol more through the process of carbon dioxide and the malic acid, and they interact and convert the sugar to alcohol. So the heat isn't generated, so there's not as much extraction for the tannins of the wine to come out. So the wine, even though it's a finished red wine, is soft tannin. The key benchmark of this wine is to have this wild strawberry, raspberry aromatic. It's a very distinctive aromatic.
It is.
To successfully really have this wine and release it and talk about it in this fashion, it needs to have that character. And I think we did get that.
This is
it's the first one I've made.
Oh, it's delicious.
Thank you. I have a couple of families that
pretty
are friends of
classic.
mine in Beaujolais, and so I was talking to them ahead of time. I found the tank that I wanted, that I could remove the tank top so that and gently lay all the clusters in, so we don't crush these. We don't have a must.
Do you gently lay them cluster
literally,
by
like-
cluster?
Kind of.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
we sprinkle them in a little 40-pound box, and we lay them in, and then once we've got it full, then I either buy dry ice, or this year getting dry ice was tough because the fires were going and food processors needed it to keep things cold. But so I had a little snow that we could make with liquid carbon dioxide, and just to blanket that so the oxygen wasn't there, and then I could seal that tank back up and start that fermentation. But I was talking to the families and talking to them about everything as I was planning this process. And I'd done my homework, and they were telling me, both families told me the same thing. Because sometimes the fermentations will stall out and you won't. Because what happens is when we have the whole must fermenting, you have one fermenter and the whole wine is one entity. So when it's fermenting, there's one number of the sugar decreasing and the alcohol coming up. In a situation where we have 100% whole cluster and we're doing it this way, every little berry inside the berry has its own fermentation going on. So we had hundreds of thousands of small fermentations. And you can take, because of the weight, there'll be a little bit of juice that breaks free from the clusters, and I could take that, sample it, and just to track the fermentation to make sure that it was still converting the sugar to alcohol. And the both families said, don't worry if it stalls out, because without oxygen, sometimes they'll just stall out, or if you get any issues, don't worry, you can press it and finish it naturally. There'll be native yeast, it'll jump right through. So if you get halfway, you're gonna get that aroma and character that you want, and then it'll jump through. And so don't panic, because we rarely get it 100% through. And 40 days and 40 nights later, I got this, it ticked through like it was, I mean, so perfect. And
It
I think
tastes
it
like
kind
a.
of shows it.
Yeah,
It's
nice.
delicious.
They usually make it with Gamay. I couldn't find
It's
sour,
got
but so it's all Pinot Noir, which is a cousin of
it
Gam-
tastes
Thanks.
it tastes like Gamay.
Thanks. I'm pretty
It's
excited
delicious.
about it. I made a whopping 50 cases.
Oh, is it still available for those who
There's
want to?
about 4 cases left. We released it on the official day, a week before Thanksgiving, and there's a handful. I haven't done the inventory after the weekend, but yeah, I'm really happy, and everyone's been so kind. The winemaking community, who all kind of heard about it and bought some. I got the warmest texts on Thanksgiving Day, everybody who held it. And
They're not being kind. That's not why they're buying it. they wanted it.
Yeah.
They wanted
well, they were
it. They
sure
liked
kind
it.
with their comments on Thanksgiving Day
I know,
to get
that's
those
'cause it
rolling
tastes
through
good.
and have people like Odette and Rod Berglund from Joseph Swan send me notes that they needed a case, or that Odette said, you know, that it went great with turkey and even better with the blackberry crisp. Or I mean, everybody's. It's been a fun project.
Yeah.
Very fun.
Yeah.
Now, I think your tasting room is only what, 5 blocks from here?
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
close. So
Yeah.
you're a neighbor. You're in the hood.
Yes.
So Guy is just off of downtown Healdsburg. So we're all neighbors here. And I think we have some photos. It says about, do we have some photos that you sent us on your home vineyard? And
I sent a few. Oh, there's a picture of the winery.
there we go. Okay.
Because it's a functioning winery. Our tasting room. There's my family.
Well, it's a fun winery.
True family winery. Both my sons work with me. You know, Cooper was 2. He's now 28 when I planted the vineyard. So his business card says assistant everything.
That's
He
his
suckered
title.
vines for $1 an hour when he was 12, and he makes me feel guilty for giving him $1 an hour for doing that. But anyway, both my boys work with me, and my daughter's in the picture, and all my grandkids, and yeah, I'm pretty lucky.
Well, it's a
human
lovely
being.
family.
Yeah.
And so your son is working with you now.
Yes.
And are any other family members?
Well, both
also?
my boys, so
Oh, both of
Cole
them.
and Cooper both work with me, and that's
Oh, very
our
nice.
whole production staff. So that's the view from my house that I struck. That's this morning, actually. I wasn't at the winery and there's my dogs,
Nice.
Mala and Mojo.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, Guy, I want to hear a little more about your.
So
go ahead.
this is the beginning of my winemaking career, Sky Vineyards, at the top of the Mayacamas on Mount Veeder, 1989, my first harvest. I was selling Sky, and I got to work, and that's when I really shifted over. And so that last photograph, the Gusto, I made wine in Argentina and New Zealand for a dozen years. This is an auction lot where I'm drinking Cristal and eating Krispy Kremes, because our lot just raised $24,000 for a children's special needs school.
Very
Just to have dinner
nice.
with me on that deck, and so
Very
yeah,
nice.
I sent a whole. See, this was my international label. I made Malbec in Argentina because the seasons being
so-
opposite. I was doing Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere.
So you were living here and traveling?
Yeah, 99 through 07.
Mm-hmm.
Started in Argentina. That label was for then I went to New Zealand and started doing Sauvignon Blanc. And there were a couple of years, crazy enough, right in the middle where I and I was only making about 1,000 cases at the time and doing everything myself. The boys weren't working with me yet. And
then were you selling it? This was
yeah,
this
I sold it
post-passport?
100% direct here. No, this was post-passport. So 99, passport sold in 98, and I ran off in 90. I was selling Argentine wine. I met some amazing people, and in the 99 vintage, got invited down because the seasons are opposite.
Right.
So springtime here, everything's pruned. It's not quite alive yet, and so I'd go, April 1st, I'd run down and crush Malbec. And so for a couple of years, I met these amazing people in New Zealand. And Sauvignon Blanc,
were you doing
stainless
it-
steel white wine, you don't have to sit with it like
Right.
you do. So 2 vintages, this is crazy, but I'm such a lucky person. My family let me get away with it. But I would leave the last week of February and go to New Zealand, crush Sauvignon Blanc, come back about 3rd week of March, once everything was through primary fermentation, and I got everything stable. Then I worked till April 15th and leave for Mendoza and make Malbec, and then come back about middle of May.
Now, did you do this? Was this your love of travel, your love of New Zealand Sauv Blanc, your love of,
Yep.
it's just
Yep.
your love of all of these
Yep.
things? And did you have a?
Because I could.
'Cause you
I
could?
got invited, and I'd already done a couple in France, and I knew that relationship that if you come and work for free, it's a good gig. You get good tasks if
Right.
you're there to just put your head down and bust your ass and never ask for $1.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to get a job.
Yeah. And so would you stay with friends there? And
Yeah, I stayed with both places. I stayed with the families that I was working with.
are you? You're not still making?
No, I didn't. I stopped making the Malbec because doing red wine from a distance was hard because I had to go 3 times a year to really do that. So by 03, I was finished with the Malbec. But I kept making the Sauvignon Blanc through 07. But when the whole recession and everything hit in 08,
yeah.
09, and because when the dollar was strong, I had swag as a buyer for grapes. I had some of the older vines of Sauvignon Blanc in Marlborough at a whopping $600 American because it was 2.5 to 1 to the new Kiwi dollar. So, but once the whole recession hit here, then the dollar value dropped,
Right.
and then to do it from a distance didn't cover the travel or anything else. But really, it was affordable in the beginning because I would make it down there with that currency exchange and then sell it at full retail through my winery
back
because
to your-
Davis Family was
back to your
launched by then.
Marketing background. Good
Yeah.
for you.
So, and I didn't make Sauvignon Blanc here, and I was making very little, bigger red. So the Malbec and the Sauvignon Blanc both fit in between Russian River Chard and Pinot, and worked out pretty slick.
Wow, what an exciting!
Yeah, and you learn
Project.
so much. Every harvest. So at that point, I wanted to be great at. I wanted more experience, and to have 2 harvests a year. And I wrote one newsletter. What did I call it? Chasing the Tomato, because I would be here and have the fall and the harvest here, and I'd get pruned, and
Chasing
then
the tomato.
because I'd get down there and everything would be this, this season. There's
Right.
not going to be fresh tomatoes here pretty quick. They're about gone now.
Right.
But then I would get in the air 3rd week of February, and I'd land in New Zealand, and it'd just be ripening. Seasons are exactly opposite. So
Yeah.
it was just like August, and I'd eat fresh tomatoes, and I'd get to have.
Fresh tomatoes all year round.
Yeah, I was spoiled.
It's funny. Well, this is lovely.
Thanks.
It's very elegant, but it's a little bit fuller bodied too.
That's great.
It's really nice.
Thank you.
Well,
No,
and
this was picked, I picked a vineyard for this I chose a vineyard for this that I knew would, knowing I wanted to be bottled and release it on the international release day, that 3rd week of November, my vineyard sometimes out further west won't be ripe until October 1st sometimes. So out near where Bonovia is, there was a vineyard that I had worked with before. That's that Santa Rosa Plain. It's a little bit warmer.
like off of Hall.
Pardon?
Like off of Hall.
It's off of Willowside and Piner. And so we picked this 2 days before the fire started. It was already tucked in and sealed off, and
Very nice.
So it gave me plenty of time.
Well,
Here's our Russian River
yes,
Valley
here's
right there.
Here's our map of Russian River.
We're in that dot. We're just about the middle of those 3 colored swatches right now as we sit.
And
right?
do you do wines from other appellations? You're primarily Russian River.
Mostly, yes. Make some Bordeaux blends from Rockpile that I get from the Moritzen family. I make a wine we call Cab 5, which is a 5 tally marks. It's all 5 Bordeaux varietals.
How many different wines do you make?
12, 14, 15.
But you know, the important thing is
I make about 6,000 cases across, who
So
knows? At
nobody-
least a dozen.
but
I haven't made less than 12.
but nobody
I don't
can
even know. I don't even
complain.
count.
Nobody can complain because you also have to sell it, right?
That's right.
Nobody
And
should
so-
care if you're making too
But
many
I don't make
wines.
more than 300, 400 cases of anything. I just make that much of a whole bunch
Makes
of
it
stuff.
very
I like.
very exclusive. Would your fan club like to try? Okay, here.
It's a bit of a juggling exercise with that many small lots and
Yeah,
and the
it
facility
is.
you have,
But
and-
I snuck up on it, so it doesn't seem like it
Yeah.
because I went from 2 wines for a few years, and then a third, and then it just. I grow 4 different varietals. So once my vineyard was up to speed, I was at least locked in for 4, and then, I just. No, I love making wine, and I just, Cabernet. I only make that 1 Bordeaux blend, but I love it. I just love that. And every, you know
Is it
better
a,
than anyone. You make a bunch of different things. Every wine, although we treat them fairly similar in the vineyard, kind of, sort of. Then once it comes to picking decisions and then fermentation techniques and finishing techniques, they're so different. And I love every one of those things. I just love I couldn't give one up. We talked about it, and
You talked about giving up one of your.
or if we were going to scale back,
Adopting
like
one
an
of your
18 or
children.
something, was like, wow, we're way, because we started, Grenache and this and that, and the GSM blend, and I make a Roussan Marsanne Viognier, and just because I have this true love of the Rhone Valley, and I was like, I don't know. And my sons were, my youngest, who's kind of gets stuck doing a lot of the sales part with me.
Get
like,
stuck.
I'm not giving, not yet. I don't see the problem here.
Yeah, there's not a problem. Absolutely not.
So no, we made a lot less wine this year
right.
because.
Just
Because 1 fire, 2 fire, 3 fire.
I know.
4,
It's getting. It's a little challenging that, there
I
is
made
a
a third
season.
the wine I made, because I want them all to be great, and it was if my growers had insurance, we
So
let them.
we're talking about the fires, and it was definitely a challenging time for the wine industry, but what we all have been saying is don't be afraid to buy 2020s.
No.
Because if it's in a bottle and says 2020, then it's going to taste good.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I made a third, if that, the
Right.
wine, because anything that was even 1/10 of 1% suspect, we just didn't do it.
Exactly.
We
And
just did not do it. Everything was tested twice before we.
Well, and we have a way now that
And
we can test to
Yeah.
see what the levels of smoke taint are. So don't be afraid of 2020.
No,
That's the bottom
don't,
line.
because everyone was diligent, and we do have the tools now. I had a lab testing for 10 compounds that have anything to do with it. We learned a lot.
It's like a whole new learning curve for winemaking.
Yeah, now I know all the things that for next year that I want to do to establish baseline, so I even have better control comparisons for the tests and in the future. And I want to be able to pass on things to other appellations if they have it, because things that I found from Australia and Washington State were so helpful to me.
Well, yeah, it was helpful having Australian
Oh my gosh.
winemakers and people who have experienced
Yeah.
those types
So
of
no, I
situations.
drink
It-
2020s because they're the vintage before the dry lightning storm, it was spectacular.
We were on.
Oh my
it was on
God.
track. In fact,
Just-
Oded was talking about this when he was here. We were on track to be the perfect vintage in 2020.
Yes.
And it just so if it
The
it
ones I
survived, it
have,
should be
oh my
good.
God, I just I'm so happy when I'm in the cellar right now, what wines we made.
I suspect you're always
Well,
happy
you're
in the
tasting
cellar.
one. You're tasting a 2020.
Yeah.
How's that 2020 Nouveau?
Pretty good.
It's proof
delicious.
in the pudding, you know.
Yeah.
It's there. We've all been talking about it, and it's
proof in the
2020.
Cranberry
and
sauce.
Yeah.
It's really
It's
good.
delicious.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving wine.
I'm as excited about all of them as I am that
Well,
wine.
and we're excited. We love that you brought us so many wines to taste.
This is
This
great.
is fun.
Yeah.
I mean, truly. Where would you like to take us next
Well, let's
on your
stay.
wine
We've been
journey?
drinking Pinot in one style, and let's go back to traditional. This is 2018 Pinot Noir,
Okay.
Soul Patch Vineyard, which is my estate, and I planted this 25 years ago. All organic farming since day one.
And how'd you come up with the name? I'm
It's a
joking.
mystery.
I'm just joking.
My heart and soul's in this wine. Well, it's funny though. I have had the same facial hair since I was 20, and so we didn't have that term wasn't even around. My wife used to call this the Stevie Ray Vaughan, and then when and we didn't really have a name for our estate vineyard, and it was
Oops.
it was just Davis Family Vineyards.
There we go.
Davis Family Vineyard, and it was kind of awkward. And then so we never really used it. It'd say estate grown, and then she turns, and I mean, it's so perfect. Our heart and soul is in this vineyard, and it's this beautiful little patch of Russian River Valley that our heart and soul is in. So once that term started getting used, that was my wife's idea, and it stuck.
I like it.
Everybody loves it.
It's fun. How many cases of this do you make?
About 400 cases.
Oh,
of
everything
this.
is in that.
Yeah. So I have 7 acres of this, 5 different clones, 7 acres. It's an east-facing hill. You saw the photograph, but it's an east-facing hillside. So great morning sun, no real harsh afternoon sun. So again, it's on the vine a long time. So the complexity is really, and we pick it as the top of the slope ripens first, and then it's cooler. So we pick it in usually 3 or 4 pieces as it ripens down the slope, and then I'll put a blend together that I think is the best expression of our vineyard in that year, and then the rest becomes the backbone for the Russian River blend. So we make a few different vineyard designates, and then we make a Russian River blend. We don't buy any lesser fruit, so we just buy the ones that are good enough to vineyard designate, and then after I put those blends together, then I sit down and craft the blend, which is always the best value because it's 4 or 5 great vineyards that I get to put, and it's $10 a bottle less expensive because people expect the blends to be less than the.
But I think that's fun. I think that's fun for your consumers, right? To be able to say, okay, here's all these single block wines, and then I imagine all very different, right? And then they get to do the blend and see if they can pick up some of the characteristics, right? I think that's what's
Yeah, it's
Yes,
fun.
and
kind of
so
fun to
what
kind
they
of bring that to highlight that.
Yeah, and they should buy each single vineyard and then buy the blend.
Yeah,
Just like a tasting kit.
exactly. Taste discount.
Well, in
is really
2019, I, there's a whole new, I don't know what you'd call it. It's not really a phenomenon, but it's an awareness now here in Russian River Valley that these areas that we have are so diverse. These different, we're talking about them kind of as neighborhoods, but the neighborhoods of the Russian River
Yes.
Valley are distinctly different.
Yeah, that's a new
and we've known
buzzword.
it for a long time. The reason it's a newer buzzword is UC Davis just got involved and did a mineral assay of the wines instead of the soils. We have so many diverse soil types here because of all the tectonic plates and the earthquakes. I've got a vineyard with 4 million year old soil and 140 million year old soil the avenue divides the two because as the plates shift around, it's just so, and the proximity to the coast and the different elevations and the river, creates these channels where the cool air and fog can come in. So it's been really fun, and UC Davis, that's just about to be released. We've known about it for a while, but you haven't been able to talk about it publicly because UC Davis wanted to make sure everything was in place and proper and absolute. But now it's known that, I mean, they've done studies in this process all over the globe, and prior to them doing Russian River, the most diversity I think they'd seen was the coastline of Chile, being very diverse. It's a pretty long stretch, but other than that, this is the most diverse area within these 6 neighborhoods that they've seen globally. So now we're getting to start talking about this a little bit. So in '09, I had fruit from 5 of the 6 appellations, so I got approval to do a neighborhood series on the label, and then they wouldn't.
Talking about for 19.
19, yeah, from the 19 vintage, and which I just bottled right before harvest.
Well, yeah, a lot of Pinot winemakers are sort of weighing in on this and are excited about what's happening.
And it just happened that they really did display the characteristics, and I didn't do it early on. I helped a couple growers out in 19 that I don't usually buy from that had a bigger crop than usual, and called and asked if I would be interested in some fruit.
And how many single vineyards?
Well,
How many single vineyard wines did you do for 19?
Well, in 19, I didn't designate them by single vineyard. I did it by neighborhood, but I did 5 of the 6 established neighborhoods, small amounts, and they wouldn't let me put Green Valley. I could put on the label because it's a legal AVA. It's its own appellation. But then one of the areas that's where the Nouveau comes from is called Santa Rosa Plain. It's on the other side of the Laguna. It's a little further where we are on that ridge line from Swan to Dellinger or Lindmar in there. It's called Laguna Ridge. A lot of volcanic ash in that soil. It used to be a vent for when Mount St. Helena was active, and that area was ocean bottom before it was lifted up. And so there's a lot of volcanic ash in the soil. It's lighter color than that Sebastopol series. Sebastopol Hills, and then the eastern hills out, Star Road and that area. And then Middle Reach is the west side road where Celium and Rocchioli and those guys are. So I didn't have anything from the Middle Reach, but it turned out I had these, I ended up with a little bit of fruit from a few places. So, and some of them, like Green Valley, I had multiple vineyards. So I tried to use the barrels that were the most they were the most neutral, and then they were consistent, so that the only difference was really the location that they came from.
So you had fruit from 3 different vineyards?
4 different.
Within that neighborhood?
5 different.
Well, 5.
Oh, in Green Valley,
I had
multiple. I had Dutton Ranch, and I had 2 others. So I had 3.
Separate?
No, I made a blend from Green Valley, but I keep them all separate all the way through until we start to put them together.
What's funny, it's like, I mean, I know all the areas he's describing, but I didn't, this whole neighborhoods is like this, that I haven't even heard that terminology. It's like this new sort of unofficial sub-appellation.
Right, and the goal really isn't to create an appellation there, because there isn't a distinctive line. It's not about borders, because there's obviously areas that show characteristics of each, but this was where I was in the cellar and putting blends together. It was noticeable that the descriptions that have been coming forward were really in these wines. 19 was a year where they just reflected that, and I had enough that it was almost a control on the way the winemaking had been, because I'm a very minimal intervention winemaker. I don't do a lot of manipulation. I farm organically. A lot of the producers I purchase from farm organically, so I can do native yeast fermentations. I pick when things are, when we can, ideal. And so they hadn't been adjusted. A lot of the cooperage was the same, and I used more neutral barrels for that study. And so I have a small amount that I'm excited about in a year from now, to be able to maybe take some people through.
Yeah, I was gonna
and
say, that's a
I did it
fun-
as an educational thing,
Well,
not as a marketing
there are
thing.
plenty of winemakers
so I made
who will like
tiny
that.
amounts of them, but I had 5 of the 6, and I just went for it. And so what the TTB, the feds, let me let me put neighborhood series, but they would only let me put. I got it through by using the initials of the neighborhood. So
Okay.
it says neighborhood series GV, SRP, SH for Sebastopol Hills, EH for
That's how you
Eastern
got
Hills.
around
So-
the feds?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And
That's very cool.
so I'm excited to be able to just, show them in the tasting room, or maybe even have all the tasting room people from this whole area come over and taste through it, because it's not an easy
interesting.
story to tell, but I think now there's finally some maps coming about, and with UC Davis's information, and we're trying to put it into something that, because the villages of Burgundy, this isn't a new concept. Neuilly St. George and Bon Romanée and Chambon-Musigny and Gevrey-Chambertin, they all taste different, and they're different villages in the same hood. It's been around, and finally we're not the new kid on the block, and finally we're mature enough, and the vineyards are mature enough that we're starting to see these are really true
Yeah.
differences.
It's exciting.
It's pretty exciting, yeah.
Very
yeah.
exciting. You like the
I-
Pinot?
I love it. I love it. I love everything the guy's talking about too. Is I think, most of my career was in Dry Creek Valley, and with a little, dip into Russian River. But I think the whole Russian River area is just so interesting and so diverse, and just produces incredible wines. And we're talking a lot about obviously Pinots, but the Zinfandels that come out of Russian River. Like, I'm curious to hear about that, and I want to ask you about that block that's on your property that took 3 years to come back. I mean, to me, that's like, was it just
trace back, and now I also know it was a foreclosure property that I bought, and the house hadn't been lived in for 3 or 4, and the windows had been broken out, and it was it had rained inside. I mean, I'm a working stiff. I would never have the property I have in Russian River, but I didn't.
Right.
I don't have a trust fund or a whatever. So I, a previous career, I really. But I got it because of that, and I cleared the whole thing myself. I bought it to replant. I didn't buy it because I thought any of the zinc, because the brush and the bush were so high. I mean, you tried to get through it, but poison oak and blackberries, and I mean, there were oak saplings that were huge, and so we ripped and picked and but at the base of the slope as we were clearing it, and the old vines, they don't get pruned, so there's one dominant cane, that'll they keep trying to find the sun. So you'd see where this cane quit growing after this year, and then, but they used that brush like a trellis and got enough leaves up and photosynthesized in this one section at the bottom of the slope where the water table is higher and a little bit cooler, and they had, they were still alive, completely misshapen. I mean, it's not the prettiest vineyard, because every vine, I mean, I'm bringing them back slowly to that uniform goblet shape, but some of them still are like, because the trunks had dried out on some of them, and it was a sucker that had actually won the war over 20 years. So we, on some of them, we use the sucker as a little shoot that comes off the bottom next to the ground, and usually we rub those off so that the energy doesn't, gets to be in the main canopy. But sometimes that had dried off, and the sucker had won the. And so some of them we tied the sucker to the trunk to use it as a trellis, and others we cut it and put a stake and started. So sometimes it would look like a brand new vine had been planted, but it was still, so the vines were 100 years old when I got the property, 99 years old. They were planted in 1896 by the Minucci family.
Wow.
And the vines were in their 8th year of production before the first automobile came down that road.
so
Yeah, that's
And now
an
I
amazing
prune
concept.
it with a computer in my back pocket. I can dial my friends in Beaujolais and ask them advice, without even going to the house.
Wow. It's just such a testament to how hardy these grapevines are, right? I mean,
Well,
they
yeah.
just
Right.
Or
amazing.
life will find a way.
Yeah.
Drop my sound box. Am
Are
I
you?
good?
Thanks. And is this your?
just
is this the
happens to
vineyard
be.
we happen to be discussing?
Yes, it is. It's the 20. What do we have? 17? Yeah.
Yep. Well, shall we?
Let's do.
I think we shall.
I was so fortunate because there were enough old guard growers around 25 years ago when I got this property, and when I could see that they were intact, you know, I'd take the pruning shears and you'd clip the canes, and all of a sudden there'd be one with green tissue. It's like, this thing's alive, and you could tell they hadn't had fruit for ages. Right. And but we cleared it around, and then I had some people who were farming old vines, and some of the cornerstone families here in Russian River Valley, and two really smart individuals told me, don't give up on them, but if in the third year they don't set fruit, they're probably not coming back. Okay. But give them 3 years, and that was 95, and in 98 it set enough fruit. I made 3 barrels off 3 acres. I made
Very
70
nice.
cases, and now we make about 250 cases from there.
Are you ready to
They're
try
120.
some?
This is our 125th lap around the sun.
That's so crazy. It's like a restoration project, right? Except out in the vineyard.
Yeah, but being in this cool climate and being down at the cooler spot in the vineyard, it keeps an elegance to this grape that I just love so much. But it also takes me full circle. I mentioned Sky Vineyards, and that was an organically farmed old vine Zin vineyard, and I loved that wine that they made from it. They made it in a lower alcohol, more elegant style, and I was a huge fan of it. I never was a fan of that massive, jammy. I preach to my sons, juicy, not jammy. And this old block, they're grumpy old men, just like me some days, and so they won't all ripen at the same time. You know, they might have 4 clusters is all on the vine, and they all ripen. They're all on pace to ripen a week apart.
And then do you have some white grapes mixed in there?
Oh yeah,
That usually happens with the old vine.
This wasn't a this was 22 acres, and it was actually planted in blocks. So the Carignan block was where our Chardonnay is now, and into the 4th year, and I even let it go into the 5th year, and it still didn't set fruit, and so we ended up planting the Chardonnay. So the Chardonnay's 5 years younger than the rest of what's there, because I was hoping the Carignan would come. So most of it is Zinfandel. There's a little bit of, there's a few white grapevines in there. There's a little bit of Alicante, but for the most part, it's 100%.
They're usually strange things that you find in there.
Yeah, yeah. You know, the white grapes that are in there are about this big.
I know, like table grapes or something.
Well, I love this style. I think, like, I always feel like that you can make Zinfandel in like a white tablecloth, elegant style. Doesn't have to be big, over the top, jammy. I mean, they're great too. Whatever it's like, you know, whatever you like, that's cool. But I personally like this type of style of Zin, and I like, you know, to me, I wish there was more of it.
I like that description, white tablecloth Zin.
Well, because I think this is my chip on my shoulder, natural chip on my shoulder of like coming up in Dry Creek, you know, in my wine industry career, and you know, Zinfandel being, you know, what Dry Creek is most well known for, and always sort of taking a backseat to Cab and Pinot, and I was like, wait a second, man, we belong at the white tablecloth as well, you know?
Exactly.
Right. Well, I just remember in the very beginning, Deloche had the Barbieri and all those things that were on Piner Road in Russian River Valley, and they were so beautiful, those old vines, and made with a sense of they were more like refined Italian wine than they were jammy, and they were, so that's what really gave me this fondness for Russian River Zin. And so when I had this, I was all in on trying to really give them some dignity back, these old gentlemen that had been let go to just, and there's still poison oak that bites me every year that I can't, you know, in the middle of the winter when you're pruning, they're just the sticks and the, you know, and I don't know, we think we've got it all out, and then, you know, one of the old trunks that sneaks up in the middle of the trunk that's hollow, and the next thing you know, I'm plastered. It's like,
I love your personal relationship with this vineyard. That's wonderful.
Well, and this is so misshapen that I just take it on myself to prune it, because the decisions are not like when you're in the rest of the vineyard. The decisions vine to vine are pretty similar. Like I cane prune, but it's not that tough to figure out where you want to use for next year's wood. But in the old vines, you go to the next vine, no matter what you've done over there, it's nothing like this one, and you go, all right.
That's it. You don't let anybody else do that's your block. You prune that block.
No, still not much. I mean, we're getting closer, but it's still such a funky shit show.
So-
And every vine is such a head scratcher that I don't want anybody else to just be frustrated
That's cool,
by it,
though.
because I can let go. And usually it's a sunny day, and I take chunks of it as I go when I have the time through January usually. But you can hear the water running in the gopher holes and stuff
Yeah.
underneath, and there's a winter creek on one edge, and it's just so peaceful, and I'm just by myself, and yeah, I dig it.
Fabulous.
I
That's cool,
do.
man.
I love to tell everybody that, and tell everybody I don't have cell reception out there, and just kind of call or ID check and dismiss. And
Guy, let's.
I didn't really say that. I would never screen any of your calls ever,
So, Guy, let's.
sweetie.
Let's talk. Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about your adventures. It sounds like you've traveled quite a bit. We have a. Oh, here we go.
Tour de France 2005. That's the finish. I put in for a lot. It was the 100th anniversary of the Tour de France, and there was a lottery, and you could put in for a drawing, and you win one of these cool original wool yellow jerseys. And if you know the bicycle racing, the Tour de France is the most epic kind
Of course, yes.
crescendo. And as you cut, there's this old patch, and you come into town, and then they do 3 circuits around a 19-mile lap right in the center of Paris, and everything's closed off. And in 2005, I put in for 8 spots, and we won 4. So that was my brother, myself, my oldest son, and his wife. And
You won the lottery to
we
get.
were one of 100 people who got to go, and we rented
Very
bikes,
nice.
but we got to ride the 19-mile circuit when the streets of Paris were empty. So the race starts like 90 miles out of town, and it comes in, and then they have 3, and it's the last day of a 23-day race.
Right.
And we drew, and so I rented bikes over there, and we flew into Bordeaux and met the race. So we're watching it on television every day, and then flew into Bordeaux, met the race, and then kind of took the train and hopped one day ahead of it, so we'd see it finish and start, and then we'd leap ahead, and then got into Paris a day ahead, and then we got to go pick up those jerseys, and we rode the 19-mile. So when they started 90 miles away, we got to start and ride, and then join our family and the rest of everybody, and then the racers come in, and Lance Armstrong won his 5th in a row that year. So that's one piece, but the travel I think you're talking about, we do a ton of adventure travel. Like I've trekked the Himalayas and done. This is great. This is Ornellaia Winery in Tuscany. These are little carts that these guys use to train the vines. Those low head train vines. They're little electric carts, and they click them along. And look, they're instead of breaking their backs, bending over to do those. This is a kiln that the Iberians made amphoras in 2,300 years ago. This is in Penedès in Spain. This is the Andes right here. This is on the Inca Trail on my way to Machu Picchu. This is Machu Picchu's the summit there in the distance that we're going to be at the next day. So we did that's Machu Picchu right there.
And these are adventures you take people.
No, these aren't. These are adventures that.
These are your own
with
adventures.
my family and stuff. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's Ornellaia. We did take people, and it was extraordinary.
Yes, I think we have some people here you've taken.
Yes, exactly. That's the summit of Half Dome, with my son and both sons and my wife, and that's Curacao scuba diving. My daughter, brother, and youngest son Cooper. That's me scuba diving in the Indian Ocean, where we dove with tiger sharks. That's Hawaii with giant mantis. That's the Drakensberg Mountains in South Africa, where that's where the tiger sharks were. This is Bhutan at 17,000 feet. That's the summit in the Himalayas. That's somewhere where there was a beach and a horse.
Well,
So we love those challenging vacations where they just push you a little bit to engage yourself. And we were in a conversation with a couple of winemakers who were from the EU, and they were here in the States selling wine, and I'd met them over the years, and we were all sitting there. And they were of similar mind, and we got in this conversation about how travel like that is like harvest. Because in harvest, you've been watching the vineyard through the year and becoming connected to it and learning about what this harvest's like. So you're starting to do winemaking from bud break on, knowing the vintage, and you start to plot things. And then as it starts, you just become immersed and you get this shot of adrenaline. I mean, if you really look at, well, we don't keep time cards, obviously, you and I, but if we were, no one would believe it, right? I mean, at harvest, especially now that we night pick and all this stuff, we're 2 and 3 a.m. and we're leaving at 11 p.m. and we do it for 60 days or what. And these kind of vacations are like that, where I start to, and this wasn't just me, but this collective energy at the dinner table, but you start to do homework on these places that you're going to go, and they're challenging, but you learn about the culture, so that it's not just a trek on the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, but you learn about that Peruvian and Inca culture, and you get this knowledge, but then you get there and you have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, and you start to do this, but then you find this adrenaline that delivers you, and then and you're so challenged that and different people on different days are pushed kind of right to the limits. But then the day ends and you're at dinner and you've made it, and everybody heals overnight, and then you go back at it, and you might be weak today and strong tomorrow. We all help each other get through it. And then when it's all over, there's a serenity and a grace to the whole thing, that we've all done something that just, you don't get to, not everybody, you got to earn it to have that memory and to be connected to those places. You've gotten there, but it hasn't seemed like work except for a moment here and there. It's guided by just this inner strength, and it's kind of like harvest does for us. Like, if you really knew that you were going to do this many days with this many hours and this shit show and that one, you'd go, I might skip 3 fires or whatever. You're like, I don't know if I need this harvest, And if you really knew what that trek was going to be like, you might go, you know what, I'll meet you guys back in Cusco.
Do you write about your adventures? Are there photos about your...
There's a bunch of photos.
On your website?
It was fun kind of this morning. No, not really. That's all just
memories
personal stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
And, but it just has become one of those things where you start doing this, and we started doing these service trips and philanthropy and things that we were talking a little bit about. We have some friends in common, and it turns out that I know them because of some of these service trips we did through the Waldorf School here, where my son went, and we would do fundraisers at the winery to help these kids go. And that Bhutan trip, where we were in the Himalayas, we were backpacking in handmade soaps and sweaters to this nunnery in the Himalayas, and that's when we went across that pass at 17,700 feet. Was a day delivering goods up. And when you're so stripped out when you get there, and it was like the 3rd day of this trek, and we got the stuff to them, and we didn't even know if they'd care or anything, and they were so overwhelmed by the whole thing. It was just, and then the next day we moved on, and we had another agenda. When we got there, we were going to plant trees at like the next place on this reforestation where they had a bunch of erosion, and I've just been lucky enough to be in those places.
Well, you've been proactive. You've put yourself
but they've
in those
been presented
places.
to me,
I
and
know,
I was
that's
crazy
fabulous.
enough to go, I'd do that.
Well, it's you're obviously a marketing. In addition to all your marketing, you're a winemaker, a adventurer, and a philanthropist. It's very impressive. It's been really nice talking to you.
Thanks.
Do you have anything you'd like to tell people about visiting Davis, or buying your wine, or going to the website, or?
Yeah, we're right here in Healdsburg, and the winery's right on the banks of the Russian River, so on the south end of town. Davis
beautiful.
Family Vineyards. Thanks. DavisFamilyVineyards.com, DavisWines.com, and those are the best ways to find us. We're in the major restaurant cities around the country. We're only in 6 states, but they tend to be, you know, we're in Illinois, so we can be in Chicago, which is one of the best food and wine cities in the
I
country,
agree.
I think, if not the. And so we're in New York and New Jersey and North Carolina. Amazing place, this beautiful east to west state that has mountains to Charlotte to Raleigh, and this great community. I'm part of this special needs children's school, Frankie Lemon School. Look it up. Special autistic and Down syndrome kids that start at 3.5. And with that charity, I'd like to plug Frankie Lemon School in Raleigh, North Carolina. There were 5 rooms in the basement of a church, and now they have 125 student campus, all handicap accessible and things that started because of an events called Triangle Wine Experience, which is now Triangle Wine and Food Experience, and it's their major source of funding. So this year the auction is all online, but Frankie Lemon, Lemmon, in Raleigh, North Carolina, just an incredible, changes lives all over. Some of the teaching tools that we've developed or not we, but that we've helped drink our way into the hearts of everyone. They've been developed that are now used all over the world to help teach special needs kids. And so, yeah, Davis.
So I would say support Davis, and in turn, people will be supporting your philanthropies.
Yes,
which
absolutely.
is absolutely fabulous.
Thanks.
It was such a pleasure
That's great.
talking
Thank
to
you.
you. It was
Thank
interesting.
I
Definitely
know we
will-
see each other, but we talk about like what's going on in the present. We don't really talk much about our stories.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I look
Thank
forward
you.
to more stories. Make sure you go to Davis Family and purchase wine and visit, and things will be opening up soon so that you can visit all the wonderful taste rooms in Sonoma County. And cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks again.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, George.
George.
George
Cheers.
needs wine.
Thank you.
George always needs wine.
And so we will
Family, friends. Yeah.
to all of your
see you.
fans over there. So thank you again. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it. And until next week, enjoy wine, enjoy life.